And welcome back, everybody. We are here for round 7 of the Pokemon 2022 Bilbao Special Event. I myself, as always, am Costa, joined by the lovely Mr. Jamie Boyd. And so far, it's been a very, very high impact action sort of event.
Yeah, it's been a great tournament so far. We've managed to conclude the senior division as we saw in the previous round, so congratulations to Alessandro for winning that. But now we are at the point in the tournament for the Masters division where we're getting to the kind of make or break kind of rounds.
Yep.
We've got some players that are getting pretty much guaranteed at this point to top cut, but then there's these players that we have at a record of X and 1 that you cannot afford to lose anymore, and we are going to be featuring 2 of those players here.
Well, exactly that, and I think being that X1 as well is it could be quite worrying and very full of stress as well, because you want to try to make sure that you need to win out, basically, and logically the top cut is with resistance naturally can be very hard to try to get through, especially if you just miss out because, for example, an opponent's opponent was able to go ahead and attribute and into that general score. So we do actually have the vote available, everybody, for you to go ahead in chat and put who you think will be able to come out triumphant and push into round 8 to try to make that top cut.
Yeah, we do have Jonas Wiegel versus Pablo Santos Fernandez, so please show your support to both of these players. They are currently at a 5-1 record, just 2 wins away from guaranteeing that top cut. So yeah, so going to be a great match to feature, and we can have a look at the 2 players that we are going to be featuring in this round. So Jonas Wiegel was going to be coming in with as a previous regional champion back in the 2017 format, was able to win a regional championship. But Pablo, not so many achievements behind their belts. It's going to be one of the newer players that's probably breaking out in this tournament. So we've seen featured a couple of those players already in this tournament, and it's nice to feature yet another one.
Oh yeah, and I think so far with the previous trainers that we have actually been able to feature, they've done exceptionally well, and they've been able to just go ahead and try to bring some very sort of interesting hyper-offensive teams at times as well, and be able to push through as much as they can and break the meta, as it's so hard to do so. I think especially with the predominant sort of like Rinja Sun matchups and all that stuff, that people have to make sure that they are prepared going into this so far. And I think, to be honest, I haven't seen that many Rinja teams, to be honest. So I think so far it's just kind of making sure that you do have these sort of structure and counterplays to that sort of flow chart of the matchup.
Yeah, we haven't featured too many going into, or at least on the stream. We saw Eric in the initial stream. We saw in the seniors finals there was one as well. But otherwise we've had a big variety of restricted pairings going into this tournament. We featured quite a few different pairs. There's been a couple of repeats of the Zacian and Kyogres, but then there's been a pretty wide variety, and we should be seeing another new restricted pair we haven't featured yet on this stream as well.
Oh, yes, and both Jamie and I were very excited to actually see this, so we are very excited to actually be able to get it on stream, as we do have Pablo's achievements as well, being a favorite Pokemon. Metagross cannot go wrong with
another
that
great
at
one.
all.
Metagross
Another
is a great
Pokemon.
One. Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, exactly. So what we are going to be doing is we're going to be going straight into team preview, as we will see Jonas on the left, Pablo on the right. And Jonas is going to be bringing the Kyogre, Calyrex Shadow Rider, Thundurus Incarnate, Landorus Therian, Rillaboom, and the Whimsicott. Whilst over on Pablo's side, we are going to be seeing the Necrozma, Duskmane, Kyogre, Mimikyu, Amoonguss, Incineroar, and Rillaboom. So commonly you would actually see a Calyrex Ice Rider rather than a Necrozma Duskmane being paired up with that Mimikyu, but not under Pablo's team building strategy.
Well, it is still a Pokemon that is entirely weak to the Ghost typing, so you can absolutely Shadow Sneak yourself. And Necrozma is probably one of the best Pokemon to have the weakness policy as well, given the fact that its ability reduces the damage from those super effective hits in that Prism armor. So it's going to be able to shrug off those attacks very comfortably, and most notably going up against the Calyrex Shadow Rider here. So you want to be able to survive those Astral Barrages. Solgaleo, the equivalent to Necrozma Duskmane, you sacrifice the Prism armor for not being able to be intimidated or lose your stats, but the Necrozma is much more able to take on the Calyrex Shadow Rider, because it's being led straight away, it seems, in the face of the Pentra. Look at that, we've got the Calyrex Shadow Rider facing down the Necrozma straight away against the opposing Mimikyu and Necrozma. Both restrictors coming out for Jonas as well, so just wants to deal out a lot of damage straight away.
Both of our trainers going for the full momentum grabbing sort of strategies in those leads. I would be a bit scared, if I'm completely honest, Jimmy, about Jonas's lead if I were Pablo. But then again, you do have a couple of options on your side as well. Shadow Sneak is a very good priority-based sort of move that could be coming out from this Mimikyu. And oh my lord, both of our trainers are straight into the action. We're going to be seeing a Dynamax over on Pablo's side. It's looking to be that Necrozma Dusk main wanting to be able to double its HP there to essentially try to batter off any sort of huge damage coming out from Jonas' side, which, to be honest, is what we're expecting at this point.
Oh, this is going to be huge damage. You've got the two strongest spread dealers in the game, pretty much, with the Calyrex and the Kyogre. But Calyrex is going to have to take that Shadow Sneak to start off with, but still is able to survive that quite comfortably. Shadow Sneak didn't go into the Kyogre, though, so it's going to be able to do a full HP Water Spout at this point and outspeeds the Calyrex, so that's going to confirm the Choice Scarf on that Kyogre and break the Disguise in the Mimikyu, and that's not going to be able to survive. At least the Necrozma does. You can see the benefits of that Prism Armor. That was even a critical hit coming out from the Astral Barrage, and still able to shrug that off and activate its weakness policy. So you've effectively sacrificed the Mimikyu at this point. That's not going to be setting the Trick Room. Neither is the Necrozma going for that Dynamax, but you are able to survive and respond with an attack, which is going to be a Max Quake. So even though the Calyrex has got that Grim Nay boost, it's not going to be able to make use of it. It's just being KO'd.
It really isn't, and even though it is getting the special defensive boost for itself there with the Max Quake, it's not exactly going to be as helpful when you are remaining on 46 hit points if you're the Necrozma. So was it worth it is what I'm going to probably ask. We do obviously see the critical hit did matter. It would not have taken that much of damage, but we do actually see Jonas bringing in the Thunderous Incarnate right now against Pablo's Rillaboom, and I think Dynamax is looking pretty good for Jonas right now.
Oh, but yeah, it definitely could be. You can at least bring the Rillaboom against the opposing Kyogre, so the special defense boost shouldn't matter too much in that regard, because you could just launch off the Grassy Glide and KO the Kyogre, but it would have to Dynamax to be able to survive that attack. Bringing in the Thunderous, that usually indicates that's the Pokemon that wants to be going for the Dynamax. If you don't go for the Dynamax with the Thunderous, then you're stuck going for something like Fly into the Rillaboom, whereas you want to be going for an Airstream instead, and Kyogre doesn't want to be taking a Grassy Glide. It's just going to switch straight out here.
And it makes a lot of sense. It will be switching out for Jonas's own Rillaboom right here to be taking that Grassy Glide. As to be expected, we do see the Thunderous going for the Dynamax. It makes a lot of sense. It could just go for the Max Airstream into the Rillaboom, barring any sort of Protect coming out from the Rillaboom. It will likely pick up the KO, and the Necrozma, even though it is at +2, it can still be a threat. Even if it is at such low HP, it may need some prioritization, but Pablo's going to opt to actually go for the Max Guard this turn.
Yeah, it's going to keep itself safe from any of the max moves that comes out for the Thunderous, and the Grassy Glide was hitting into what was the Kyogre, but the Rillaboom able to take that quite comfortably, and Necrozma able to survive through this turn because that Max Lightning just hits into the Max Guard.
And I do actually like that Max Lightning play, because you're able to just go ahead and nullify the grass terrain, go get the electric terrain set up, so you can better place your Kyogre going into the mid to end game scenario. But in this situation, the Max Guard was very safe but very good from Pablo's side. You want to make sure that you could at least add a bit of longevity and not allow Jonas to go ahead and just reinforce his own momentum to force certain plays and essentially force Pablo down to his final two Pokemon, because Necrozma at 58 hit points, it is very, very close to just being picked up off of game one and forcing Pablo to have to bring in his final Pokemon, which we will see the reveal being the Amoonguss.
Yeah, interesting choice of the Amoonguss, not bringing the Kyogre to this matchup, but it is going to be just an attack coming out from the Rillaboom. A Grassy Glide, very good switch in for the Amoonguss, going to be able to take that very comfortably. But Max Lightning should be strong enough to KO this Necrozma at this point. It's been brought incredibly low, and it's just going to be able to pick up the knockout there. So you only got to make use of one attack from the Necrozma. Even though it got the weakness policy boost, it wasn't able to make use of it at all. So the Necrozma is just going to drop here, and you've got two Grass-type Pokemon just waiting in the back for Pablo now. You're down to the Amoonguss and the Rillaboom against the Thunderous that can still click Airstream.
Oh, and we do actually see a reveal of the Life Orb being the item of choice on that Thunderous and the Amoonguss, to be honest, it can actually go ahead and apply some Spore potential into the Thunderous, of course. Maybe put it to sleep. I guess it does have a lot of sense if maybe it has any sort of a move in its utility to try to
whatever you want. But the lead that Jonas went with just meant that the Trick Room was not an option at all. The Mimikyu was being KO'd whatever it did. Just got some last hit damage. And the Necrozma was forced to Dynamax, so Trick Room wasn't an option. And that means that the Amoonguss is pretty much forced into just a redirection kind of game because it is not able to get those spores off first. And it probably should be able to make it through the turn at least. If it's got a Cobra Berry, we'll have to see if that is going to be the item of choice, because the Thundurus just gets to go for an Airstream into either Pokemon at this point. And it is going to be the Rillaboom take care of that Pokemon. And Amoonguss is the left on its own. Even if it managed to get all the spores off, it's not going to have the offensive pressure to break through the rest of the game.
Yeah. No, it's definitely not going to. And I think in this scenario as well, we're just going to go ahead and see the KO being taken up. The Spore goes into the Thundurus, actually, which makes a lot of sense. Once again, you don't have anything to lose in that scenario, and I think the slot of which Kyogre actually switched in for the Rillaboom was very safe, both for the fake out as well as any potential spores going into the slot, because likely, if you're Pablo, you're not going to be trying to spore and try to make that sort of heavy read, expecting the Kyogre coming in for the Rillaboom.
Yeah, and there's always the potential of the Max Lightnings that can come out to prevent the spores from going into the partner Pokemon. We've seen that the Life Orb is on the Thundurus, so that does get spored at this point, but you can still at least protect your other Pokemon. And we're going to get the Kyogre switching out here, not going to go on the offensive yet. You can switch in the Rillaboom, that's going to be immune to the spores. So at the moment you've got a Sleeping Thundurus, doesn't matter about the spores at this point, it's just going to wait it out, and the spore can't affect that Rillaboom as it switches in.
Yeah, and this is my concern with Amoonguss. Like, it's really good to try to get a Trick Room set up, like you mentioned earlier. But on its own right now, what can it really do other than maybe have access to Pollen Puff, maybe have access to Grass Knot, which could actually prove to be quite nice against a Kyogre when it's not Dynamaxed and in grass terrain. But in this scenario, even though Thundurus is asleep, you can't do much against it, really, can you? And
well, to be fair, at least the Thundurus and the Rillaboom can't do much to the opposing Amoonguss as well, because if you've got Protect on the Amoonguss, you get to Protect on the second turn of the Flies, and then the rest of the moves don't really do too much to the Amoonguss. So maybe the Amoonguss could do it. If it does have a Grass move, it is maybe possible against the Kyogre. If it's only got access to Pollen Puff, then I don't think there's really a chance for this Amoonguss at this point.
But then you do have the Fly capability coming out, right? Because what is Amoonguss going to do about the Thundurus in this scenario? That would be my concern. But then again, obviously, we'll be able to see how it pans out. This could be a scenario that, Pablo is trying to figure out what his win con could be, even in a scenario as tough as this, 1 versus 3 from his side of the field. The Thundurus actually takes full turns of sleep there. Woodhammer comes out from the Rillaboom in the grass terrain. Times 4 resisted there, but still does respectable amounts of damage. We see the Pollen Puff coming out, and whoa, my lord, it deals a very good amount of damage there onto the Rillaboom, indicating perhaps that Rillaboom is not the Assault Vest variant.
Yeah, definitely not based on that damage, especially from a not same type attack bonus move coming out from the Amoonguss. But having the Pollen Puff usually indicates that you don't carry the grass moves, so it probably won't be able to deal with the Kyogre, and it's going to be struggling to make it through the rest of this game. It's basically a formality at this point, and we're going to end the game with a forfeit there, as Pablo knows that the game is over at this point and needs to move into that game too. But just buying a bit more extra time of thinking, the Amoonguss just took a few more turns, and that's entirely reasonable if you want to be taking that extra turn to extra time to think of what your game plan is going to be in game 2.
Oh, 100%. And I think what Pablo probably needs to recheck upon is the leads, I think, because there's a lot of... He was basically caught out a bit with the Calyrex Shadow Rider and Scarf, Kyogre Scarf, being so crucial there to actually just go ahead, break the disguise initially, and allow the Calyrex Shadow Rider to do its thing, just deal spread damage. So strong spread damage. And I think in that scenario, kind of forced both a super effective hit onto the Necrozma Duskmane. It does proc the weakness policy. It did actually get a critical hit, though, in that game 1. I do think that Necrozma at least would have had a bit more room, wriggle room, essentially, to kind of deal with any sort of threats coming in. But then again, it just didn't feel... It felt very read-based, and unfortunately, you didn't have a lot of room to maneuver in that scenario. Maybe Trick Room could be the way to go if you're Pablo.
It would be against these kind of teams. If you do get into Trick Room against those teams, they do try and knock out your Pokemon first. If you're moving first in the Trick Room, then that's going to be much more detrimental to your side of the field. And if the Necrozma gets in Trick Room, it's going to be able to get those Steel Spikes or the Max Quace before it takes the damage, so that it can shrug them off a bit easier. If the Amoonguss gets into Trick Room, it's going to be able to Spore before the opposing Pokemon can even move and guarantee that they go to sleep. So if Pablo manages to get into Trick Room, then it's going to be a much more comfortable time for him. But the fact that he led with both Trick Room setters and was not able to get into Trick Room may have been a bit of an issue. might mean to go for one Trick Room setter and a support Pokemon to try and get into that Trick Room.
Yep.
But at the same time, what do you do against double Spread Move in just Water Spout Astro Barrage?
Yeah, I do think that Rillaboom could actually be a shout from Pablo's side, because he could threaten that Kyogre upon the lead if for whatever reason Jonas decides to go with the same lead, whilst also having that fake out pressure on the field, and that could be really, really crucial. Maybe set it up with a Mimikyu on the side, allow the disguise to be there and present to be able to withstand and, you know, essentially negate the Astral Barrage, because at this point, what more can you do? The Amoonguss, you can lead, yes. You can try to force a support, yes. But you're going to be taking a lot of damage for it, and that's something that you really need to consider and try to utilize as many resources as you can, because that was the main big concern from Pablo's side. He ran out of resources, he ran out of fuel in the gas tank, and he wasn't able to essentially go ahead and deliver on the outside.
Yeah, and we were talking about the adjustment of the Rillaboom, and that is going to be the Pokemon of choice paired up with that Mimikyu.
Yep.
And it's going to be Whimsicott's paired up with the Calyrex this time. So you do have the option of double priority here. You could go for the Grassy Glide and the Shadow Sneak, and that would be enough to KO this Calyrex. So very nice switch up for that Rillaboom. But you're facing down the Whimsicott now at this point. So maybe if you go for the double up into the Calyrex, then you could be open to a taunt coming out from the Whimsicott. So maybe have the Mental Herb on the Mimikyu. We've yet to see that. But going with the Whimsicott over the Kyogre means that to break the disguise, it would be the Calyrex doing so.
Yes.
And then that means that the Whimsicott is not going to be strong enough to be able to KO this Mimikyu. So this is a much more comfortable way of setting up that Trick Room.
Exactly that, and ooh, we see a reveal of a pesky little item that Whimsicott was holding, being the eject button. So Jamie, this could have even been a switcheroo play coming out from the Whimsicott if, for whatever reason, Pablo decided not to go for the fake out there, as we actually do see the Landorus Therian now rotating in as that Whimsicott has been switched out, being able to go ahead and get its Intimidate off, drop the attack. Oh my lord! We see the Imprison reveal coming out from this Calyrex Shadow Rider, absolutely sealing up that Trick Room from being utilized and used there from that Mimikyu.
Yeah, very, very nice use of the Imprison there.
Wow.
That was pretty much the only thing the Calyrex could have done to stop that Trick Room at that point, because if you just go for the Astral Barrage, then the Mimikyu just has its disguise broken and is still able to set up that Trick Room. A very nice Imprison there. So no Trick Room for now, and Landorus is still going to be very threatening at this point. You can just go for an Airstream and KO the Rillaboom, and that will free up your Kyogre that's presumably waiting in the back as well. So a very nice play for that Calyrex. You still are open to the potential of the Grassy Glide and the Shadow Sneak, but now with that Intimidate, is that going to be enough to be able to KO the Calyrex? Because we saw how much the Shadow Sneak did in that game 1. In combination with the Grassy Glide, I'm not sure that's going to be enough to pick up the KO. So very, very nicely positioned for Jonas.
It really is, and I think, well, we're actually going to be seeing the switch up right now from the Calyrex Shadow Rider into that Whimsicott yet again. I think Pablo just needs to make sure to have a bit of patience here and not try to rush any sort of moves that they may be going for. They go for the Grassy Glide into what was that Calyrex Shadow Rider, now actually doubling up with the Shadow Sneak. We see the interactions of the priorities there. Rillaboom naturally being faster than Mimikyu from what it seems, and the Rock Slide just comes out from this Landorus Therian. Just wants to be able to go ahead and break that disguise there to free up the Calyrex Shadow Rider in the back, but being that the Calyrex is no longer on the field, Jamie, the Imprison is no longer in effect.
Yeah, so you could go for the Trick Room with the Mimikyu this turn. It's just, is it able to survive this turn? Because now the disguise has been broken, you can just go for a max move with the Landorus, and that's probably going to be enough to KO this Mimikyu, especially if you have something like Helping Hand potentially on the Whimsicott that is so very commonly run on these kind of teams. So Helping Hand max move would surely KO the Mimikyu. Maybe an Incineroar switch in would allow that Mimikyu to be able to survive if that has been brought to this game. But that is not an Incineroar switching in, that is a Necrozma.
That definitely is an Necrozma coming in, so one would just be left with wonder to what Pablo's strategy is going into this, as we are actually going to be seeing the Dynamax being utilized from Jonas' side with this Landorus Therian, and Landorus just returning from its previous glory. Hasn't been given that much attention in the most recent series, but just wanting to try to remind itself why it's a really good Pokemon, especially when it's being helped ever so kindly from this Whimsicott right now, going for the max weight, as it will go ahead and target that Mimikyu, and Jamie, it's enough to pick up the KO, allow itself to get that +1 in special defense as well as the Whimsicott here, and so far we've just seen that that is a very crucial KO to pick up.
Yeah, absolutely. That's another turn that Trick Room is not going to be activated for Pablo. They've got their Necrozma on the field now, but you are facing down a Dynamax Landorus, and even with the Prism Armor, I'm not sure that it'll be able to survive a Helping Hand Max Quake at this point. Maybe if you do have the Incineroar waiting in the back, it would been potentially able to survive, but that is Munga switching in instead. So that's actually still going to very much help out getting the Trick Room now, because you can go for a Rage Powder. Whimsicott has used up its eject button, so it can no longer switcheroo into the Necrozma, ignoring the Rage Powder because of the grass typing, but you can at least bring that Max Quake into the Amoonguss instead of the Necrozma. So Pablo has found a way that they can get into Trick Room if they do want to be going for that. Very interesting leaving the Kyogre on the bench here, but that Amoonguss was very crucial here as a bring to be able to switch in and get that Trick Room up, because that seems to be what Pablo needs to do at this point. You want to be able to go for the Max Steel Spikes before that Landorus can hit the Necrozma, because at the moment it's still at neutral and it can still take a Helping Hand Max Quake, but when you get into the Trick Room, you can go for a Steel Spike into the Whimsicott, KO that, and you'll be able to take the Max Quakes much more comfortably.
No, but instead we're just going to be going and seeing that very safe redirection there, and not being able to actually redirect. I actually decided to go ahead and target into that Amoonguss, maybe trying to break a potential Focus Sash onto it, guaranteeing that it actually picks up the KO there with the double up of the Landorus's Max Airstream. Critical hit. We didn't see a Cobra Berry reveal there, Jamie, which may be an indication that this could actually be a Focus Sash. So a really, really solid play from Jonas there, just trying to make sure that he could get rid of any sort of support that is still available on Pablo's side, whilst Necrozma goes ahead and sets up Trick Room. I think in this scenario, we can actually see that Rillaboom comes in. It can potentially threaten whilst under Trick Room, but in this scenario, you just need to make sure that you waste Landorus's Dynamax and start boosting up on your defenses if you're the Necrozma.
Well, you've almost used up the turns of Dynamax for Landorus. It's only got one more turn at this point, and you do get to go for the Steel Spike before it fires off one more move. That might allow the Rillaboom to be able to survive an Airstream if it goes for that, but the Whimsicott could go for a Helping Hand on the way out, presumably from the Steel Spike into that slot, and then that would still allow the Rillaboom to be KO'd to that Max Airstream. But you do need to be Dynamaxing here if you are on Pablo's side. If it is going to be that Rillaboom, that is a potential to be able to survive the Airstream that could be coming out from the Landorus, but the fact that that ball was coming out from the sky rather than the ground indicates that that is going to be the Necrozma going for the Dynamax, so going to be opting for the Steel Spikes instead. It does need to get his defenses boosted up so it can take on this Landorus a lot better.
No, it definitely can, and I think in this scenario we're just going to be going ahead and seeing the Grassy Glide going into the Landorus. Switcheroo actually coming out from this Whimsicott, wanting to be a bit cheeky and try to make sure that it actually switches over the items there. It removes the Miracle Seed from the Rillaboom. The Rillaboom will not be able to deal as much damage as it would have liked in previous turns with that Grass-type boosting item, whilst we do see the Max Steel Spike deal a considerable amount of damage into that Landorus. Not quite enough to pick up a KO, but definitely enough to just go ahead and try to boost its own defenses. Then we actually see the Max Airstream is actually successful enough to actually pick up the KO onto the Rillaboom, leaving this Necrozma on its own. But Jamie, I don't think the Necrozma's exactly out of it. Necrozma actually likes benefiting from getting its defensive, its physical and special defensive boost going. So just wanting to make sure that you bulk up enough and you're able to potentially 1 versus 4 if you can. I wouldn't put it past Necrozma, to be honest.
Yeah, it's good. 1 versus 4 is going to be a difficult ask, though. Not many Pokemon can do that. Necrozma potentially could, but we've seen the switch that Jonas was willing to switcheroo even without the eject one, just to steal the item from the opposing Rillaboom. You can absolutely do the same thing to that weakness policy, so that it's not going to be able to get any of the offensive boost that it needs. It's going to be able to do enough damage to the 2 Pokemon that's on the field, but if you do take care of that the weakness policy, you don't care if when your Calyrex comes in to just go for the Astral Barrages very safely, and yeah, like we do see there, the Whimsicott is going to be stealing that weakness policy, so you can hit this Necrozma with all the 6 super effective moves you want.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, that play, as
weakness policy Whimsicott, let's go!
Or not, as we actually see the Whimsicott being taken out of action right now, forcing Jonas to go ahead and bring a 3rd Pokemon out from his arsenal. We do actually see the Calyrex Shadow Rider was the only 3rd revealed Pokemon. We haven't actually seen the 4th one, and we still won't be able to actually have a little peek at that, as the Calyrex just decided to opt to come into the fray. So my potential thought is, Jamie, we've seen the eject button on the Whimsicott. Given that there was Imprison on the Calyrex, is this an indication of potential Focus Sash on it?
You almost always run Imprison with a Focus Sash because you want to guarantee that your Pokemon at least survives a hit, so in case there's a heavy hitter and a Trick Room setter, the heavy hitter can't KO your Imprison. So yeah, it would make a lot of sense for that Calyrex to be the Focus Sash variety. With the Landorus, it's not going to be doing too much damage with the Earthquake, and you'd be breaking your own Focus Sash, so I wouldn't be surprised if we see just the Landorus switching out to be able to get some Intimidates on the Necrozma in the future as well, and yeah, that is what we're going to be seeing. Even if that is the Kyogre switching in, it does want to be at full HP so it can go for its Water Spout, but you'd be fine taking some damage from the Necrozma at this point, because it's not going to be able to pick up a knockout with a Max Quake. Maybe if it has something like a Max Mindstorm, that could be able to pick up the knockout on the Kyogre, but it's just a Max Quake, which it still kind of needs to be going for, because it needs the special defensive boost so it can take on the Astral Barrage a lot better. And now the Focus Sash that is presumably on the Calyrex is broken, but you've still got a lot of offensive pressure coming out from Jonas' side of the field, as he's just going to go ahead and reverse the Trick Room. Doesn't want to have to wait out all the rest of the turns. You can reverse the Trick Room now because, of course, while you have Imprison, you've got to carry the Trick Room on there as well to be able to Imprison it in the first place. Very nice reversing of the Trick Room there. So now you can just launch off your big, strong attacks. You've got an Astral Barrage coming the way. You don't have to worry about the weakness policy. You've got a full HP full HP single target Water Spout coming this way as well.
Yeah, this has been exceptional play from Jonas. I think he's just been able to go ahead and actually show so much experience and value going into this. He's slowly yet intricately been setting up this board state for a while now, and we see that single target Water Spout dealing over half of HP. Single target Astral Barrage following up immediately after this Necrozma at +1 of special defense. It is not enough, and that goes ahead and seals this best of 3. Jonas Wiegel is able to go ahead and get the 2-0 win versus Pablo.
Yeah, very nice showing for the Calyrex there. And the Imprison was very nice in that game too. That is nice. Being able to take a game 1 and then surprise your opponent in the game 2 is always a very nice thing to do. And there was the potential of going for the Shadow Sneak and the Grassy Glide on that turn 1 on the Imprison. And then even if that doesn't pick up the KO because of the Intimidates, you'd still be able to just Shadow Sneak it again next turn. So very, very nice catch of the Imprison going for the Trick Room. That just gave the momentum all the way to Jonas. And Pablo had to sacrifice far too much to get into the Trick Room. They did want to get into the Trick Room, but gave up far too much to be able to do it. Because when they did, they were just left with Necrozma. And really you need Necrozma and some other things to make use of the Trick Room. Necrozma wasn't enough on its own.
Jonas had a lot of tools available to himself, and a lot of low-risk, high-reward sort of plays as well, right? As, like you said, there was a lot of buffer space for Jonas to be able to just go ahead and just take advantage and immediate momentum as well. I think, like you mentioned, Pablo was a bit on the back foot, matchup-wise as well, especially with that reveal of the Imprison, potential Focus Sash, Calyrex, Shadow Rider. Doesn't really give you a lot of options unless you're aware of it, you know of it, and you're like, okay, I need to prioritize and focus on it to get rid of it, and then allow my other Pokemon some breathing space, Trick Room setup, weakness policy. But then we even saw Whimsicott with the eject button switcheroo stuff, and that's really tough to go up against if you don't have a set plan against it.
Yeah, I quite like the use of the switcheroo even without the eject button. Because usually it's just used once to be able to eject maybe a Dynamax, or hopefully a Dynamax Pokemon out of the match. But this was used to reduce the damage output of the Rillaboom. It's used to not care about going for super effective moves anymore. So a really nice use of the switcheroo there, even though it wasn't just the classic eject button. So yeah, I really like seeing that, and I would have liked to see the weakness policy boost activate on the Whimsicott, but unfortunately far too strong for that.
No.
But,
unless it has a Cotton Guard or something like that.
It
would have to be. But
yeah, I think the switcher in the helping hand was good enough for that Whimsicott.
Oh, 100%. And with that, of course, ladies and gents, that is the conclusion of round 7. We're just going to go to a very short break, and we will be back with the final round 8 of the day to seal up day 1 of the Pokemon 2022 Bilbao Special Event.